Detective Marcus Flynn never imagined that a routine call would unravel everything he thought he knew about justice. That chilly Friday evening, the city's streets were slick with rain, reflections of neon lights shimmering on wet asphalt. He had responded to a report of a suspicious woman lurking near an upscale neighborhood, a place where crime was rare and his presence often more ceremonial than necessary. The description was vague. A woman in dark clothing, acting strangely. When Marcus caught sight of her standing alone by a lamppost, checking her phone with calm composure, his instincts screamed suspicion. She matched the profile in his mind. Someone who didn't belong. Someone who might be casing houses or, worse. "Ma'am," Marcus called out as he approached, his voice steady but firm. The woman looked up, calm eyes meeting his with neither fear nor guilt. "Can I ask what you're doing here at this hour?" "I'm waiting for a friend," she said simply. No hesitation, no nervous glance away. That to Marcus was unsettling. He noted her posture, confident, unyielding. Something about her didn't sit right. Without concrete cause, the law whispered to him that she was trouble. "Can I see some ID?" Marcus demanded, stepping closer. She complied immediately, producing a driver's license without a word. Marcus scanned the details, registering the name, Cynthia Brooks. No criminal record showed up on the system, but that only sharpened his doubt. Criminals often avoided the digital trail. Suddenly, his radio crackled. "Units, look out for a female suspect matching that description. Dark clothes, involved. In a recent break-in." Marcus's pulse quickened. This woman was a perfect match. With a nod, he said, "You're coming with me." Cynthia's eyes flickered with something unreadable, neither fear nor anger, but a quiet certainty. As they walked toward his patrol car, a sinking feeling started to coil in Marcus's gut. The city's rush of sirens and distant voices faded into an uneasy silence between them. He barely noticed the curious glances from neighbors peering out their windows. Inside the police station, Cynthia remained composed as she was questioned. She answered calmly, her voice steady and measured. Marcus watched her closely, trying to find a crack in the facade, a nervous tick, a telltale sign of guilt. But she showed none. "Why would you be at that location?" Marcus pressed. "I told you, waiting for a friend. Someone I was meeting for dinner," Cynthia replied evenly. His frustration grew. Nothing added up. The more she spoke, the less convinced he became. Yet the evidence was circumstantial and the system demanded action. Reluctantly, he placed her under temporary hold while he pursued leads. Days passed, and the story caught the attention of local news. Headlines painted Cynthia as a suspect in a string of burglaries plaguing the city. Social media exploded with speculation. Marcus felt the pressure mounting, both from his superiors and the court of public opinion. Then came the first real crack in the case. The supposed victim of the break-in identified a different woman in a security camera photo, not Cynthia. It was a devastating blow to the accusation. But Marcus wasn't ready to concede. Something deep inside him resisted admitting he had targeted the wrong person. Meanwhile, Cynthia remained silent about her true identity. She knew what Marcus didn't yet understand. This was no ordinary woman, and the truth she carried would turn the tables in ways he couldn't imagine. As the city buzzed with gossip and tension, Marcus stood on the edge of a precipice, the line between justice and error blurring beneath his feet. The next moves would decide not only Cynthia's fate, but his own. Great. Here's part 2 of Cop's false accusation backfires. She's not who he thought. Exactly 650 words, continuing the narrative with rising tension and deeper character development. The fluorescent lights in the interrogation room buzzed faintly as Cynthia Brooks sat silently, her hands folded neatly on the table. Across from her, Detective Marcus Flynn shuffled through paperwork, trying to force clarity into a case that was already slipping from his grasp. Marcus had replayed every moment since that rainy night 1,000 times in his head. The cold certainty with which Cynthia had answered his questions was unsettling. No hesitation, no stammering. If anything, she appeared more in control than he did. "Look, Cynthia, Marcus said, leaning forward, voice low but insistent. "We have witnesses who say they saw someone matching your description near the crime scenes. The evidence isn't just coincidence." Cynthia's gaze didn't waver. "I've told you, Detective. I wasn't there. I don't know anything about those break-ins." Marcus let out a slow breath, rubbing his temples. "Why won't you tell me where you were? We know you were in the area." She shook her head gently. "Because I'm not required to prove my innocence. You're the one accusing me." Marcus's frustration deepened. It wasn't just the case. It was the growing awareness that this was bigger than a simple mistaken identity. The more he pressed, the more he felt himself slipping into unfamiliar territory, where assumptions didn't hold, and truths lurked beneath layers he couldn't yet see. He glanced down at her driver's license again. Cynthia Brooks. No record, no alerts. She was a ghost on the system. But there was something about her, an aura of quiet power, like a coiled spring waiting to leap. His phone buzzed. A message from his partner, Jake. "Got a lead. The surveillance tapes show a different woman, but it's all grainy. Gonna check her background now." Marcus frowned. The lead promised nothing but confusion. Meanwhile, the media frenzy was growing louder. The city had already painted Cynthia as a criminal, a dangerous woman hiding in plain sight. Marcus felt the weight of public expectation bearing down on him, but also the gnawing guilt of possibly destroying an innocent life. That night, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, staring at the case file. A photo of Cynthia from the station mugshot stared back at him, calm, unreadable, almost serene. He caught himself wondering who she really was. Back at the station, Cynthia's silence was not a sign of weakness, but a shield. She knew the consequences of speaking too soon. Her life was not what it seemed, and the wrong words could destroy everything she had built. Outside the interrogation room, a different kind of conversation was taking place. A man in a tailored suit stood quietly with Jake, eyes narrowed as he examined the surveillance stills. "Are you sure that's not her?" the man asked. Jake shook his head. "Positive. This woman is not Cynthia Brooks. She's someone else entirely." The man's expression hardened. "Then we have a problem. Cynthia Brooks is not just an ordinary citizen. She's someone with ties that complicate things, ties you don't want to tangle with." Jake frowned, sensing the gravity beneath the words. "What do you mean?" "Let's just say she has a history, not criminal but classified. Something that would turn this whole case upside down if it got out." Meanwhile, Cynthia sat in the holding cell, her thoughts racing. She wasn't a criminal, but she was no ordinary woman either. The secret she carried was a weapon and a curse. Her presence in that neighborhood wasn't a coincidence, it was a mission, but she needed time and patience. The next morning, Marcus returned to the station with a heavy heart. The new information had shaken his confidence in the investigation. He had been so sure, so convinced that Cynthia was the woman to blame. Now doubt shadowed every step. During the briefing, his captain delivered the news. "We're re-evaluating the case. The victim identified someone else. We can't hold Ms. Brooks without further proof." Marcus felt a mixture of relief and frustration. He had arrested the wrong woman, and the consequences were already severe. Cynthia was scheduled to be released pending further investigation, but Marcus was not ready to let go. The case gnawed at him, not because of pride, but because something told him Cynthia's story was far from over. As Cynthia walked out of the station, free but watched by countless eyes, Marcus lingered behind, the weight of his mistake pressing down on him. He had accused the wrong woman. But who was she really? In the days to come, the truth would start to unravel in ways neither of them could predict. And Marcus would learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies wear the mask of innocence. Cynthia stepped out into the morning light, a fragile freedom in her stride but an iron resolve beneath. The buzz of reporters was distant now, but the damage was done. Her name was stained, her life disrupted. Yet she carried no bitterness, only a careful calculation. Detective Marcus Flynn watched her leave the station with a conflicted gaze. The wrong woman had been in custody, but the truth lay tangled beyond the surface he'd scratched. His instincts told him Cynthia Brooks was no ordinary citizen, but what that meant, he couldn't yet grasp. Back at his desk, Marcus scoured every file, every piece of evidence related to the burglaries. Nothing connected Cynthia directly, but the mystery deepened. Strange phone records, encrypted messages, and odd travel logs hinted at a hidden life. He found himself drawn deeper into her shadow world, a place far removed from petty crime. Meanwhile, Cynthia returned to the apartment she shared with her elderly mother. The walls, once a refuge, now felt like a cage. She moved carefully, aware of every sound, every glance. The media had painted her as a suspect. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors. Her mother, Grace, greeted her with worried eyes. "They'll keep watching you now," she said softly. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Cynthia nodded, her voice firm. "I have no choice. The truth is bigger than all of this." What Grace didn't know, and what Cynthia couldn't yet reveal, was the real reason she had been in that neighborhood. She wasn't there for a friend or a casual meeting. Cynthia was part of a covert operation, one that blurred the lines between law and secrecy. In the days following her release, Cynthia resumed contact with a small, discreet network of allies. Secure messages confirmed that the break-ins were a smokescreen, distractions meant to cover a far more dangerous scheme unfolding in the city. Marcus, meanwhile, found himself at a crossroads. His captain warned him to tread carefully. "This isn't just a burglary case anymore," his superior said gravely. "If you dig too deep, you could stir up more than you expect." But Marcus couldn't stop. The image of Cynthia, calm, unreadable, almost regal, haunted him. He wanted to understand who she really was, beyond the false accusation and the rumors. One afternoon, a confidential tip led Marcus to a rundown warehouse on the city's edge. He approached cautiously, heart pounding. Inside, shadows shifted, voices whispered. Suddenly, Cynthia appeared, calm, collected, but wary. "Detective Flynn," she said quietly. "I figured you'd come." Marcus took a step forward. "Why are you here? What's going on?" She looked him in the eye, unflinching. "There's a conspiracy beneath this city's surface, Marcus. Those burglaries, they're a cover-up. Someone powerful is trying to manipulate events, and I'm trying to stop it." His mind raced. If what she said was true, it explained the secrecy, the cryptic behavior. But it also meant he had been pawning off suspicion onto the wrong person, and worse, he might be in over his head. "Why didn't you tell me?" Marcus asked. "If you're on the right side of the law, why hide your identity?" Cynthia's face softened for a moment. "Because revealing who I am puts everything and everyone I care about in danger. I'm not just a citizen. I have a role to play, one that's bigger than you or me." Marcus felt the weight of her words. For the first time, he saw Cynthia not as a suspect, but as a guardian in a shadow war he hadn't known existed. They stood in silence, two strangers bound by circumstance, their fates intertwined. Just then, a noise outside snapped their attention. Footsteps, voices. They weren't alone. Cynthia's eyes narrowed. "We need to move now." As they slipped into the labyrinthine corridors of the warehouse, Marcus realized the story was far from over. The false accusation that had started it all was only the beginning of a deeper, darker truth. And as they vanished into the shadows, the city outside remained oblivious, caught between lies and justice, waiting for the truth to emerge. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the cold steel corridors of the warehouse, bouncing off walls cluttered. With crates and forgotten machinery, Marcus and Cynthia pressed themselves against the shadows, breath shallow, hearts pounding. They had seconds, maybe less, before whoever was coming found them. "We can't keep running," Marcus whispered, eyes scanning every exit. Cynthia's gaze was sharp, calculating. "This place is a front, part of the network I've been tracking. They use it to move people, information, and sometimes weapons." Marcus swallowed hard. "Why didn't you say any of this before? We could have worked together." "I couldn't," Cynthia said quietly. "Not until I was sure you wouldn't be a threat." Trust is hard to come by in my line of work. His confusion deepened. Your line of work? She hesitated, then met his eyes with unwavering resolve. I'm with a covert unit, not officially recognized. We operate in the shadows to protect the city from threats no one knows about. Marcus's mind reeled. The woman he'd accused was a secret operative? The pieces fell into place. The calm under pressure, the refusal to reveal her identity, the encrypted messages. Before he could ask more, a loud clang shattered the tense silence. Footsteps multiplied. Someone had found their trail. Cynthia grabbed Marcus's arm. Follow me. They darted through a narrow passageway, the stale air thick with dust and secrets. Around a corner, Cynthia slid open a hidden door, revealing a small, dimly lit control room filled with monitors and radios. Here, she said, gesturing to a seat. We can figure this out. Marcus sank down, still catching his breath. On the screens, city maps flickered with blinking dots, some marked safe, others flashing red. Cynthia keyed in commands, eyes flicking rapidly. We've been tracking a group planning to destabilize the city, she explained. The burglaries were a distraction. Small-time thefts to keep police occupied while they set up something bigger. Marcus leaned in, absorbing the information. And you were trying to stop them from inside. Yes, Cynthia nodded. But when you arrested me, it threw everything off. Now they're more cautious and the clock is ticking. He stared at her. I made a mistake. I judged you without knowing the full story. She smiled faintly. You're not the only one. This job forces you to make split-second decisions. Sometimes they're wrong. The tension broke momentarily, but the urgency remained. The radios crackled with distant voices. The hostile group was moving. We have to act fast, Cynthia said, pulling out a secure phone. I'll contact my team. Marcus hesitated. Am I part of this now? She looked at him, serious. You don't have to be. But if you want to help, you need to trust me. The weight of everything pressed on Marcus. The false accusation, the shattered trust, the dangerous path ahead. But the woman before him, who had been so wrongly accused, was fighting for the city in ways he never imagined. I'm in, he said finally. Outside, the storm clouds gathered, matching the turmoil within the warehouse. Marcus and Cynthia worked, together, coordinating plans to intercept the group before their plot unfolded. In the silence between commands, Marcus found himself wondering about Cynthia's life. The sacrifices, the secrets. How had she kept this hidden? What had driven her to live in the shadows? Cynthia caught his glance. Not everyone can carry the weight of truth, she said softly. Sometimes it's easier to be invisible. Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of her words. He had misjudged her, and now he was part of something far bigger than he'd ever expected. As the night deepened, the lines between right and wrong blurred. The false accusation that had seemed so clear-cut was now just the first chapter in a battle for justice hidden from the public eye. And in that unseen war, trust was the most dangerous weapon of all. The night air was heavy with tension as Detective Marcus Flynn and Cynthia Brooks stood on the rooftop overlooking the city. Below, the streets buzzed with ordinary life, unaware of the storm about to break. Every second counted. Marcus glanced at Cynthia, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone as she coordinated the final details with her covert team. The woman he once arrested was now his partner in a high-stakes battle against a shadowy enemy. This group, they're planning something big, Cynthia said, voice low but steady. Not just theft or disruption. They're after control. Power over infrastructure, communications, maybe even the city's emergency response. Marcus's mind raced. He had come face to face with corruption before, but this was something different, calculated, deep-rooted, and far-reaching. We need to stop them before they cripple the city, Cynthia continued. My team will block their moves on the ground, but we need to cut off their command center. That's where the real damage will happen. Marcus nodded. So we're going in. The plan was risky. Cynthia and Marcus would infiltrate the building, housing the command center while the team created diversions elsewhere. Every step was a gamble, but hesitation was a luxury they couldn't afford. They slipped through the shadows, moving swiftly but silently. Cynthia's knowledge of the building was precise: security codes, guard rotations, blind spots. Marcus followed, feeling both anxious and oddly calm. As they neared the command center, voices echoed down the hallway. Cynthia pressed a finger to her lips, signaling Marcus to stay quiet. A group of men in tactical gear were gathered around screens discussing their next move. The atmosphere was thick with menace. Cynthia's eyes hardened. This is it. She produced a small device, a jammer designed to disrupt communications. Marcus watched as she expertly placed it on a console, the screens flickering and then going dark. Chaos erupted as the men scrambled to regain control. Cynthia and Marcus seized the moment, moving swiftly to detain the ringleaders. In the midst of the chaos, Marcus locked eyes with one man who seemed to command the operation. The man sneered, defiance burning in his eyes. "You don't know what you're stopping," he spat. Marcus replied steadily, "Maybe not, but I know justice when I see it." As backup arrived, the group was subdued and the city's safety restored. For now. Later, back at the precinct, Cynthia's true identity was finally revealed to Marcus and the higher-ups. She was a highly trained operative with the Department of National Security, assigned to undercover operations that straddled the line between law enforcement and intelligence. Marcus felt a mix of awe and regret. He had nearly destroyed this woman's life based on assumptions and incomplete information. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have listened." Cynthia gave a small, understanding smile. "You did what you thought was right. But now we know better." Their partnership, born from conflict, had forged a new understanding, not just of each other but of the delicate balance between suspicion and truth. As the city breathed a collective sigh of relief, Marcus reflected on the lessons learned. Justice wasn't always clear-cut, and sometimes the greatest threats wore the masks of innocence. And Cynthia? She returned to the shadows, her mission far from over, but now with an ally who understood the cost of mistaken judgment. The city was waking up to a quiet calm, but for Detective Marcus Flynn, the echoes of the past weeks lingered like a storm cloud refusing to pass. The false accusation, the chase, the revelation, all intertwined in a knot of regret and hope. Sitting alone in his office, Marcus stared at the file marked closed, but felt anything but closure. Cynthia Brooks, the woman he had once locked behind bars, was now the person who saved the city. A truth so profound it unsettled everything he thought he knew about justice, trust, and the fragility of perception. The phone buzzed. It was Cynthia. "Marcus." Her voice was calm, even softer than usual. "I wanted to thank you. For listening, for believing. Even after everything." He smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude. "I should have listened sooner. I was too quick to judge." There was a pause, then she said, "Sometimes the truth is a burden no one wants to carry, but you made it lighter." Their conversation was more than words. It was a bridge mending wounds wrought by suspicion and fear. That afternoon, Marcus found himself visiting Grace, Cynthia's mother. The older woman welcomed him with a quiet dignity that softened his resolve. They talked about Cynthia, about the past, about the future. Grace shared stories of Cynthia's childhood, a fiercely independent girl who always stood up for what was right, even when it meant standing alone. A woman who had sacrificed her own safety to protect others. It wasn't easy for her, Grace said gently, but she believed in something bigger. Marcus left with a new understanding, the pieces of Cynthia's life fitting together like a mosaic of courage and sacrifice. Weeks later, a public hearing was held. The false accusation was acknowledged, and Marcus gave a candid testimony, owning his mistake. The courtroom was packed, the media eager for closure. When Cynthia stepped forward to speak, the room fell silent. She spoke not with bitterness but with quiet strength, highlighting the dangers of assumptions. the importance of due process, and the power of redemption. Her words resonated far beyond the courtroom walls, a reminder that justice must be tempered with humility and compassion. After the hearing, Marcus and Cynthia met one last time before she disappeared back into the shadows of her covert world. "Thank you," Marcus said simply. Cynthia smiled, a rare softness in her eyes. "No, thank you, for seeing me." As she walked away, Marcus realized that sometimes the most profound battles are fought not with fists or guns, but with understanding and trust. The city moved on, unaware of the invisible war waged in its name. But Marcus and Cynthia carried its lessons, proof that even amidst mistakes and misunderstandings, redemption was always within reach. And in the quiet moments, Marcus knew that justice was not just about catching the guilty, but about seeing the humanity in us all, even when it's hidden beneath shadows.